different. The headlines are changing and it's quite interesting. 1 million Form 1 places up for grabs. That's a big one on the front page of the Daily Nation. Change of guard, that's a big one on the front page of the Standard. A change of guard has to do with the appointment of Cabinet Secretary. CSs have been asked to prepare handover notes. As naming of new cabinet looms, President may decide to reappoint all or some members of the old team or choose to inject new blood as he seeks to cement his legacy in his second and final term. That's a big discussion point. But let's start with this news piece that has been making headlines and is on the top strip of the Standard. NASA activist David Ndii arrested. Wanted man. That's on the front page of the Standard. Dr. Ndii was on holiday with family at a top beach hotel from where 7 men picked him up for questioning at Diani police station. The story is on page 8 of the Standard. NASA strategist held after police raid on beach hotel. David Ndii had been vacationing at a hotel there with his family and was picked up at 4 p.m. But just as lawyers, if something like this happens, we still do not know. We're still waiting for confirmation. We still do not know if he's still being held. But if at all someone is held for any reason by police from 4 p.m. yesterday, when should we expect him to be presented before court?
Thank you very much, Fred. It goes without saying that such kind of instances, when they occur within 24 hours, that is, unless it falls on a weekend, then the next working day. So we expect him to be before court today morning or probably in the afternoon hours. But it will be very interesting to see the kind of charge that they will have against him, considering the fact that David Ndii is not per se a politician, but he is one of the strategists, NASA strategists. And if we can remember very well, in the course of the week, I think it was on Thursday, that NASA named this steering committee that were to lead the People's Assemblies and to discuss, among other things, the secession calls. So David Ndii was named the chair. So we don't know, maybe if it's things that maybe lead to that kind of appointment. So we'll wait to see today, the course of the day, to hear the kind of charge that they may. But
sometimes detectives and police in general do need to conduct some interrogations here and there. Is that considered an arrest? If at all they take you in for interrogation, is that considered an arrest?
Actually, arrest begins at the time of booking. When you're booked in, also with the OB, a particular police station, that is the time you are considered to be arrested. But at the point of arrest, at the point of can I call it point of cooperation? In the sense that
we're assuming this is cooperation.
Yeah, just cooperating in the sense that maybe you facilitated the writing of the statement, and you also help them in the purposes of investigation. I think at that point, you will only be presumed to be arrested at the point of booking and.
So wait, what you're saying is, if the police pick up someone like the headline says they picked up David Ndii and take him somewhere for interrogation, but fail to book him officially in the OB, that means he's still not arrested. So the requirement to produce him before court does not apply.
Okay, it will only apply at the point of, for example, after the lapse of 24 hours. If within 24 hours there's nothing that has been done, then David Ndii has, or his advocates have the right to go before court to ask him to be produced before court for the purpose of charging. That is one instance. But if you are just, for example, in this instance, I believe the first thing they're doing is investigation. And they're actually asking him, for the purposes of maybe framing the charges, is to ask him to cooperate, also with information, or probably with his maybe Facebook or Twitter kind of handles and all that kind of information, to help him in terms of preparation, to help the police to prepare or to frame the charges against him. So at this moment in time is basically cooperation.
Yes. Until the 24 hours lapse.
Until the 24 hours lapse. Then at that moment, then he can now say, produce me in court or not.
Yeah. Okay, NASA strategist David Ndii was yesterday evening picked up from a hotel in Diani in Kwale by armed men believed to be from the flying squad from Nairobi and detained at a local police station. That's the first paragraph of the story on page 8 of the Standard. Well, of course, we'll be following developments from that end with regard to that arrest. Other headlines that could be related: NASA leaders cite threat to Raila oath plan. That's highlighted on the front page of the Daily Nation. A team unveiled by the National Super Alliance to find a way to have coalition leader Raila Odinga declared the people's president says it is being intimidated by the government. That team includes one David Ndii. The story is on page 5. You can read that as well. Another highlight, Zarika, Kenya's finest female boxer, retains crown. A veteran floors Zambian opponent in Nairobi to defend WBC belt. Remember, Fatuma Zarika will be on this show later today in a few minutes, talking to Joey Mubengi. The story is on page 3. Cheers as Zarika punches her way to victory. Do stand by for that very interesting interview with Kenya's finest female boxer. Now to the big one, and of course the one to do with 1 million Form 1 places is a good one, yes, but let's start off with the cabinet positions, and this is very interesting. Probably the biggest talking point after the inauguration of President Uhuru Kenyatta last week on Tuesday. Change of guard, transition. There's this circular sent out by Head of Civil Service, Joseph Kenywa, to all the cabinet secretaries, all 19 of them, telling them that their term ended the moment President Uhuru Kenyatta was inaugurated, because that meant that his first term was officially over. Now, this one would be the biggest talking point, one, because of the people who will make it back to cabinet, and even those who will not make it back to cabinet. It will be very interesting. They are vetting as well, because it should happen sometime this month, but the intrigues within Parliament as well, because Parliament as is right now still does not have the substantive committees to conduct a vetting for this nominees. If the president was to present his list of nominees, because according to the story here and on page 5, if I may read something, President Uhuru Kenyatta has instructed his cabinet secretaries to start the process of handing over office in preparation for the composition of his next government. That's on the Standard. On the Daily Nation, it reads a bit different. Jubilee works to push cabinet list as NASA vows to stay away. President Uhuru Kenyatta asked all cabinet secretaries to prepare handover notes as he readies his new proposed cabinet list to Parliament for vetting this week. So it is highly likely that the list will go to Parliament. NASA still says it will stay away. What happens if at all NASA does not take part in the vetting of these nominees?
Yes, thank you very much, Fred. And just before answering your question, in the lead up to this, we've of course seen a lot of lobbying from all sides of the country, people wanting to be rewarded for, you know, their loyalty and delivering of votes. And something that maybe was a bit shocking to me was the, you know, outright admission by, you know, politicians saying that a certain cabinet secretary campaigned, you know, was very active in the campaign, something that should not be happening. But just to go to your question, NASA has made it very clear that they will not be participating in this kind of vetting. And to be honest, that is not being very fair to the state in terms of, you know, they are elected leaders in the nation, and they really should be. These are the kind of duties that parliamentarians are supposed to be doing to the state, you know, trying to vet so that we can have the best that we can have. But again, to look into it, I'm yet to see a day that an appointee is to be returned, or, you know, his name not approved. So for me, at times I also have a problem with the process itself, in that you know, the ruling coalition uses its numbers to rubber stamp the president appointment. This is not to undermine the president's ability to pick the best, but I mean, there are usually some very, very serious concerns that are usually raised in some of these appointees. I remember, like the late Kaiseri, when he was being vetted, there was this thing that came up that his name was in the TGRC report, and actually he was recommended for prosecution. So at times the process might really not be as tight as it should be. But to answer your question, I think Jubilee may opt to, you know, have a whole house committee to do the vetting, so that to, you know, have a way around it. Because if they were to use the in-house committee, then NASA will be forced maybe to form ad hoc committees to do the vetting.
Yes, but that would have implications as well, because yes, it will still be seen, even politically, that it's just a one-sided thing. What do you think?
One thing about the August House in this session is that we have the membership from the independent candidates. These independent candidates, in another legal parlance or political parlance, are viewed to be part of the minority, despite the fact that they are not per se members of the minority in the House. Therefore, if I foresee a situation if it goes to the special sessions, that is having the other committees that will maybe vet the nominees to the cabinet. I think the membership, the Speaker of the National Assembly, will prefer to put in place or to put more members of the independent candidates to be part of the other committee to be able to vet, just to give it the face of the face of Kenya, the face of to be in line with the standing orders and the standing rules for the National Assembly. So it will not have so much legal consequences or per se political consequences in terms of its membership or in terms of perception, because you put in few members of the Jubilee coalition, then if NASA and independents, therefore the process will...
Meaning that this time around the game has changed for NASA as well, for what we've been calling the opposition parties, probably ODM and Wiper, that with the inclusion of the independent candidates now...
It changes the whole scenario. It changes the whole scenario in the sense that if for example, at this moment, we are having a situation whereby cabinet secretaries are required to present maybe their scorecard to a parliamentary committee, but in the current scenario, there is no parliamentary committee. There's no legal or substantive parliamentary committee. They'll prefer to use the other kind of committees. With that kind of scenario, then it eases out the pressure on the legalities in terms of the committees. When the pressure is eased out, then it enables maybe Jubilee to have its agenda go forth. But more importantly, if you look at probably also if you look at the composition of the in terms of numbers, the National Assembly, when you say probably how many independent candidates are there, and how many do you need just to to have the legal face of a particular committee, I think the numbers of independent candidates, bearing in mind that we have at least an increased number of candidates or of independent candidates, independent parliamentarians, some of whom politically they are ideologically bound or they are inclined to Jubilee, it will make their job or their aspiration very easy for the ruling coalition.
But for how long can we sustain this? Because now if you say that there's such a provision that as long as you can include the independent candidates, then the minorities are provided for.
I think we will stay in this kind of quagmire until probably NASA coalition appreciates that we don't have a vacancy in the presidency. And that is also a debate on its own, because what really disturbs us as a country, or what really eats into permeates into the body politic of National Assembly, is that a section of the members of the National Assembly believe that there's a vacancy in the presidency, despite the fact that a president has been sworn in. If at one point or the other, the members of the National Assembly, more so from the NASA coalition, will appreciate that we have a substantive president who was validly sworn in and is now with the wings of power as a president, then these legalities will be sorted out. But one thing also I want to point out, probably, if NASA can be able, for example, at this moment they have nominated their chief whips, leaders of minority, I think in one way or another they are first of all appreciating that, by the way, we are the minorities in the National Assembly, and by just that act is an act of goodwill that they appreciated as a president. So I'll probably ask the leadership of NASA within the National Assembly to also forward their lists.
Yes.
And John Mbadi had intimated to that effect, that they will forward their nominees for other, I think it's in today's newspaper, one of it, to other positions, more so the other committees, the other membership committees, but not the commission approvals, because they on appointments, because they believe that when they do that, there will be rubber stamping the legal aspects of Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency. So I think if we appreciate and also wholesomely that the presidency is not about him, the presidency is an institution, and one of the key institutions within the presidency is the executive. And the ingredients or the citadel of the executive is the cabinet. If the procedure laid out on how to have the cabinet in place is clearly inclined to or followed, then we'll have a substantive presidency.
And if NASA does not take part in this process, they're missing out on a big opportunity, because unless something very radical happens they will have missed out on an opportunity to check the executive in terms of at least appointments of these cabinet secretaries who will serve for the next 5 years. This is Uhuru Kenyatta's second term in office, final term in office. Don't you think that this is the best opportunity for them to come say, no, this is our, at least be part of the game?
I'd say yes and no. Yes, because they might have had the chance to raise their concern, but no, because, and I've already said it, and really just to come to the aid of NASA, and it's a bit sympathetic because I'm yet to see a day that during this nomination stage that when serious issues are raised, these issues, you know, can be detrimental to that appointment. For me, it is more of just a procedure of, you know, constitutional procedure, just to meet the legal provisions.
Time when Monica Juma's nomination was rejected by Parliament, sometimes they do reject the nomination.
Yes, and it's very rare to get to such a kind of situation. And we've even seen, because there's even constitutional provisions, even after the appointment, for the removal of our cabinet secretary. And I remember very well when the NYS scandal was at its peak, and the now embattled senator Mithika Linturi tried to bring this motion to, you know, have the now governor, Kirinyaga governor Anne Waiguru removed from cabinet. It was equally opposed and you know, vehemently denied. And this is now the political aspect of it, in that as much as, yes, you know, the president, while picking his cabinet, is picking members who knows are aligned to his vision and, you know, a manifesto for the next 5 years. But some of these candidates come with usually very serious credibility issues that when even raised, you know, really don't count. But NASA should at least be patriots for a moment and, you know, say, yes, we have our agenda, we are pushing for agenda, but let's take time, let's vet these candidates, let us at least make our concerns known.
Even if they don't have a muscle in Parliament.
Even if they don't have the
voice heard.
Have your voice heard.
What if the president, and we've seen this before with the appointment of the late Joseph Nkaiseri to cabinet, he was a member of ODM. He had to move. What if the president comes up with a list that contains names from that side of the political divide?
For me, that's what I expect probably. Because, you know, as a country, first of all, just maybe to pick on where my colleague has left, you know, Kenya is a presidential system. In a poor presidential system, the way we have in Kenya, which is not a mongrel between the parliamentary and presidential system, the parliament or National Assembly, in its as a whole, is supposed to check the executive. So it doesn't really matter who are the members of the National Assembly. But once you are elected as a member of the National Assembly, or once you are nominated as a member of the National Assembly, your major solemn role, first of all, is to check the executive. It doesn't really matter. So I think if members of NASA within the Parliament, within the National Assembly, will be able to appreciate that is their role, irrespective of the political divide, then the inclusion into the committees will not really matter, because they are really doing their role. And if they are not be able to do their role, I don't think, first of all, if they are not be able to be included into the members of into the various committees, I think their salaries should be surcharged, for that matter, on the part of members of NASA, because one of the roles is a legislative role, representative role, and also checks and balances. If they are failing on one part, then
it's something that can be taken to court. The fact that NASA could be delaying the appointment of members of the cabinet.
Actually, let us not look at it from the point of members of cabinet only, but the purposes of checking the executive. And one of the roles of members of the National Assembly, more so, whichever divide you belong to, is to be part of a particular committee. As a member of the National Assembly, you should at least be part of a particular committee to be able to execute your mandate at a very minor, at that basic level. Because sometimes in the National Assembly, entire house, all of you not be able to participate at equal balance. But if you're able to be a member of a committee, then you'll be able to do your role at an extra, maybe at a more realistic level. So if, for example, the continued delay of formation of the committees will continue, then I think probably the Kenyans should maybe move to court and seek an interpretation for the same, because the continued delay also delays service delivery on the part of various government parastatals and government ministries, for that matter, and departments. Yes. Because, for example, we don't have a budget committee up to yet. We don't have various committees, maybe the energy committee. We don't know what's really going on within the energy ministries, energy parastatals.
And you say that is something that can be taken to court.
Yes, that is an issue you can probably really delve into and really challenge in terms of the legalities.
The other very interesting thing would be the kind of names that we expect. Of course, there's that issue of President Uhuru Kenyatta choosing to include people who are opposed to his presidency. Nkaiseri, the late Nkaiseri was one of those. He was in ODM. He was appointed to the cabinet and had to leave his party and join government. That could happen again this time round. Do you think that would be a game changer, given that there's been this whole talk of inclusion, inclusivity, we need to include the people from the other side, we need to listen to them. What if the president goes out and actually appoints not just some people from particular parts of the country, but actually politicians, known political heads into the cabinet?
And it will be very interesting, and I think this is a card that maybe the president is holding very dearly to his chest. Now, unlike 2013, where there was, I might say, an outright winner, you know, this has been a very contested elections, and up to date there are those who still believe that there were no elections. And there is this feel that there is no national unity, there is no cohesion, and Kenyans now need to dialogue and, you know, see the way forward. So I think this is a very big opportunity for the president now to come up with names and, you know, out of this world kind of decisions that will make Kenyans feel included in this kind of government. And I will not be surprised to see, I've seen some names already being fronted in some of these newspapers, some of ODM you know, diehards who are being fronted that might get this cabinet position. And Fred, I must say that, you know, cabinet appointments really is service to the republic, and it should not be restricted to political divide. And Kenyans should now deviate from, you know, we gave you these votes, now you must, you know, reward us back. As much as there is loyalty and all that.
There's a lot of that, right?
Yes, there's a lot of that. But we really should, because this is a service to the nation, and we should leave it to be open, you know, whether you're from Turkana, whether you voted, whether you didn't, whether you supported the ideology, you should be eligible. And I mean, the bare requirements of serving this nation is one, you must be qualified.
If at all the president and his deputy were to look at it like basically purely on the basis of merit, then you could end up with people from probably private sector and not necessarily representing the entire nation. Of course, the president is under pressure to ensure that he has names from different parts of the country as well. That if at all you get a few people from the coast, you have to get someone from the Rift Valley, someone from Nyanza. Don't you think that that's a reality?
And not just names, it should be people. You know, there are some people who might be from that kind of the public, but people feel that they still don't represent the ideologies. I mean, it's not just anybody from, you know, such kind of things. It should be somebody who people might feel that he might push for agenda. And it is a sad reality that has done this country, and we have to take it as it comes. The president now must, you know, take the lead and come up with a cabinet that is now, you know, I heard his speech during his inauguration, and he took it upon himself to unite to bring back this country after this vigorous time of campaigns. So he really should come up with, let me say, a Solomonic kind of, you know, cabinet.
And this could be make or break for the president. There are 22 positions, but whichever way it goes, even his supporters could come out feeling a bit cheated.
You know, one thing is that I think at this moment in time, the president should be a statesman per se, and should not be seen as a political party leader or a Jubilee kind of party leader, but rather a president of the Republic of Kenya. One thing, he should not fall into the pressures that most of the political and the lobby groups are doing to maybe lobby for positions. He, at this moment, he knows who are the best placed or best suited to serve in various positions. But another thing about the cabinet is about also the perception, because for example you can have a Luo or a Luya or somebody from coast whom the people themselves don't feel associated with him or don't own him, don't feel that he's part of the representation. Therefore, even if you name that person to the cabinet, the people still feel left out. So he should work around.
I think you should consider politicians, you know, mostly politicians, because we have people who lead those people.
No, sometimes it's not about the politicians. There are civil servants in particular areas who hold much clout than even the politicians. Because, you know, we've really given these politicians a lot of stake in our country. But at times, in those areas, if the government can use its structures to really understand the dynamics of what's going on at the local level, you get that at times there are people who are not necessarily politicians and maybe civil servants who hold much stake and much reputation. But more importantly, the issue of politicians and maybe civil servants or public servants should not be an issue. It's about service delivery. Some of these politicians, they're not maybe the best in terms of performance. So it should have a balance between the public servants and politicians, or maybe people from the private sector, to be able to inject new blood, to bring the issues about regional representation, the ethnic balance, various regions, and then work on the perception. Because whatever really, probably the 5 years, the former government, what has suffered from is the aspect of public perception. Because some of the people representing various areas, people are not attached to them. And maybe they have led a different kind of lifestyle that, to an extent that people don't own them. If that is not maybe worked on, then the people will still feel not well represented. But
when it comes to that issue of people feeling like they are represented, let's look at the previous cabinet. And it did not have many politicians to start with. Eventually, names like Eugene Wamalwa came in. Of course, to begin with, Najib Balala was there. But in comparison to the technocrats, if I may call them that, do you think the politicians or the technocrats performed any better than the politicians who were on the cabinet?
How to maybe rate them? For me, a politician, because being a politician, he has a way of working on his public relations and a way of espousing what the ministry is doing in a very eloquent manner. If you look at Eugene Wamalwa, for example, Eugene Wamalwa has a good grasp of what the ministry is doing, and then he has also a way of delivery of the message. But some of the people from the private sector, for example, without mentioning names, have not been in a position to really have that correlation in the interface between the public office and the public and maybe the populace. Therefore, they might be doing well at their various individual capacity, but that kind of message delivery to the outside world, and that's we see why the president formed the public presidential delivery unit, to be able to really showcase what some of these people or some of these people from the cabinet secretary from the private sector, what they are doing, because whatever the biggest problem is that it was not being seen, but they might have been doing something at the individual level, but there is a misconnect in terms of message delivery. Then just something else. If you look, I'll give an example of maybe the politicians just from the list we have, and the public servants. If you look at tourism CS, he has been a politician. He has a good grasp of what his ministry is all about. Then he also has a way of delivering the message. I'll give you the example of the mountain climbing in Mount Kenya. It was a simple exercise which anybody could do, but the interface or the communication that was really put in place to showcase that Kenya is also a mountain climbing destination really put a very good image for the various ministries. For example, if you take for Aden Mohamed, he has been the CEO of Barclays Bank, actually Africa. He is doing very well at the ministry level, but bearing in mind that he has not had that political, can I say, clout, he is not able to really communicate what.
Collins, do you agree that politicians have an advantage once appointed to cabinet in terms of communicating the work they do, and probably they come out looking better?
There are two sides of this coin. I mean, there are those who their work have spoken for themselves. I mean, Matiang'i didn't need any kind of political experience for people to see the changes. Yeah, but I think he was, he became a master now of, the PR exercise. Yes, of both sides of the world. And I might agree with him partially, but some of these CSs, I think their work has spoken for themselves. Look at the environment, the recent plastic ban. It did not take Professor Wahungu any kind of PR exercise, it was just a matter of public awareness and everything. So as much as politicians might be good in the talking, I think what Kenyans want is actual delivery. And I disagree with things to do with, the portal for, delivery. I mean, why should I go to the internet to know what kind? You see, things like Huduma Center, when they were initiated and they worked, the NYS when it was working, people didn't have to go to an online platform to see the kind of delivery. So Kenyans are really interested in, seeing the delivery in itself. And maybe Fred, to just change the topic, and focus on other aspects to these cabinet appointments. I've seen we've really focused maybe on the political, being the tribal balance. I think there are other things that are also there to be looked out for. I think the last cabinet, the president was able to meet the gender, the gender threshold, which is at least 2/3 should not be of the same gender. But now I'm also looking into youthful appointments. Some of the appointments that were made were called youth, and I really don't think if they are still youthful in nature. And also, we also have people with disabilities. I think these are people who should also be considered moving forward. So let us also move away from this ethnic and it's not all about it.
It is a very tough
the other balance is also to be met, being that this is now the 21st century. We need to see youth. We need to see also at least.
Are you saying that anyone who looks not very youthful should be dropped to the
I'm not saying. I'm saying we should have at least a representation.
We do have some very youthful-looking cabinet secretaries. Joe Mushero being one of them. He may not be that young, under 35.
Yes.
Are you talking about people under the age of 35 being on the cabinet?
Probably right about there. And you remember even like the deputy president started his politics, I think at the age of 30.
Yes.
And he was quite youthful. So there are those youths who have been there and have delivered. So at least an appointment for the youth will be a bonus.
Wow.
Yeah.
One thing, I think most are youth, but having also
this could be opportunity to decide on that list.
One thing, you see, sometimes government is a very nebulous concept. Sometimes when you're outside and looking at it, you think it's a very simple thing. But when you're inside, it doesn't really work the way you think. One thing about maybe youthfulness, and one thing that maybe the president and his deputy have maybe fallen into prey to it, is that most of our youths, one, you are inexperienced in terms of government. So if you're told that maybe, for example, write a memo, and most of the youth probably have worked with, they cannot be able to really conceptualize some of these ministries to be able to have them delivered, deliver their services very well. But I think at this moment in time, personally, I'll not look at the position of a cabinet secretary. I'll be looking at the position of the principal secretaries. And we have some youths within the offices of the principal secretaries who have done very well, like Nyakeira, as the PS of planning and planning. If you have such kind of people, maybe being considered for other positions at the cabinet level, but don't just pick a politician because he's a youthful politician outside there, bring him on board as a cabinet secretary. It will be a total chaos, because some of these things, they might look so easy from outside, but at the inside perspective, it's very difficult.
Right now, I can tell you for sure, many young Kenyans are not happy with you, because they cannot conceptualize.
Bobby was pretty young when he was appointed cabinet secretary.
I'll reserve my comments or basically on the various positions.
Yes.
But if we really endeavor to have a cabinet secretary to be able to maybe run their ministries very well, consider those ones who have also been in the system, in the sense that don't go for extremely can I say newbies in the government service and protocol, because that's why our problem begins. If you look at the ministries where we've had totally newbies, there's a lot of problems in the running and management. But at this moment in time, I really ask the president and the deputy president to really consider the young guys who have also served with them in terms of their campaigns, people who understand their thinking, people who understand the vision and the Jubilee Manifesto, to be able to be included. You can start from the board levels,
other positions.
Then move on and build an entire.
Of course, this will be the biggest talking point this week. It is expected that the president could present his list of nominees to the cabinet to Parliament for vetting. The process of vetting itself is, could I say, in jeopardy, because NASA has up until now refused to be part of any parliamentary committees, and that means the committee on appointments, which is supposed to conduct this vetting, is not properly constituted, and therefore it is not clear how that vetting will be conducted once the list gets to Parliament.
But at the same time, probably, Fred, there is also the principal secretaries. I think there's also some process.
And there is a headline with regard to the principal secretaries as well. Let me just mention it. A quick one, yes. Is set to be known in 21 days. That's on page 5 of the Standard. It will take 21 days to know who has been nominated for principal secretary positions. House speakers are scheduled to meet at State House to discuss the recruitment process. Chairperson of PSC, Margaret Kobia, also made it clear that should the cabinet be dissolved, there will be no vacuum in the civil service because the PSs are still in charge. Their time does not end, they can only be replaced.
And actually, even if they are not in charge per se, for example, there is public works, one of the PS died, though we have another acting PS, but the senior most undersecretary within the ministry is also you can hand over your
and their terms are not affected by presidential term limits.
Yes.
Let's take a look at another headline, and this is a very interesting one, a rather radical proposal. On the back page of the Daily Nation, Senator in push for 21.8 billion shillings for wards. Jubilee Deputy Chief Whip in the Senate, Irungu Kang'ata, has drafted a bill seeking to introduce a 21.8 billion shilling development fund for all wards. Should the Ward Equalization Fund bill be enacted, each of the 1450 wards will each receive 15 million shillings annually. Now, directly disbursed to the ward, do you think, Collins, that this is something we should be considering now, given the amount of corruption you've seen, given, yes, we know CDF worked to some extent. It also caused a few problems that they had to change the law governing CDF. Now a proposal to take money directly to the ward level. Do you think this is something that can work?
It could work, but again, as Kenyans, we should interrogate ourselves and look at, it should now be back to the Kenyans. Who did we exactly vote? And I'm sure there are so many Kenyans, if you were to ask them today who is their ward representative, they might not even know the name, leave alone the gender. So it's a very good idea, but really, in terms of delivery, we have seen little from some of these. Most, let me even boldly say most. But if well implemented, it is something that Kenyans should consider. But another thing that we should look into it, there is also this kind of duplicity. Though there was a recent court ruling on the CDF fund being also again unconstitutionalized, and the MPs, we've seen what CDF has previously done in constituencies. They've helped in educating, building roads and everything. So with the right kind of leadership, I think this is an amount that can be well put to use. But in the nature and the culture of Kenyan politicians, these are funds that might well end up in some of their pockets.
But it also says a lot about our understanding of the roles that each of these leaders should be carrying out. Irungu Kang'ata, let's give it to him. He has been a councillor. He has served at that level. He became member of parliament. Now he's a senator. So he says he's speaking as someone who has served as a councillor. That means he's assuming that ward representatives, we're talking about MCAs, should be the ones administering this 15 million shillings. Yet the main role for them is simply to legislate. Don't you think that even with the CDF, and that's where the problem came in, that probably we as Kenyans start confusing the role that we've assigned legislators, and we believe they're supposed to come down to the ground and actually repair roads.
One thing about the creation of this of the Ward Development Fund, it's already worked in some counties. Actually, like Kakamega County, are doing the money within the allocation that they receive per budget
from the county.
The money is redistributed at the county at the ward level. So I think in terms of structuring, it should be, for example, my suggestion, it should be that a particular percentage from whatever the county receives from the exchequer should go to the counties, but it should not probably be directly from the national, because it's already been done in other counties.
What are we saying about devolution? We've already devolved.
Actually, for me, I look at
disbursement is already distributed to that level. We now want to send money from the exchequer directly to the ward level.
That is now where there is a problem. Whatever probably the Senate should push for, it should be that a particular percentage of the monies received from the exchequer and the county government, a particular percentage of it should be devolved directly from the county government to the ward level.
Isn't that what the county government should be doing in terms of carrying out development at the ward level?
Whatever they're doing right now is to create a legal infrastructure for the same. What the county government, other counties are doing is not a unison kind of approach. But if you put in place, if the Senate, which is the legislative body of the counties, puts in place legislative framework for the same, then all the other counties will be bound to to do the same. But you see, what we have at this moment in time is that other counties, because of the vast nature of some of the counties, like Kakamega, for example, that is the approach. But other counties, they're not doing that, and they're not legally bound to do that. In a way, the money still remains or within the purview of the county governor and the...
But Collins, don't you think we're getting impatient with this county government? It's only been 5 years. Let's give it to them. They've been trying to set up the structures, probably so that they're able now moving forward to take this development to the ward level. Don't you think that probably they should be given more time to see if at all it will get there, instead of trying to fix something a bit too early?
I don't think Kenyans are being impatient. Maybe it's the politicians who are, maybe showing their greed and, what they are known for. And I think if there's something that, personally as a Kenyan, I'm proud of, is devolution in the new constitution, among other things, including also the Bill of Rights. Devolution was brought in to cure this national issue that has always been there of exclusivity, people not feeling being excluded. And that's where we had to have two kinds of government. That's the national government and the county government. And this is when now there is allocation up to the county level. And maybe what Senator Kang'ata might be unconsciously doing is agreeing with what NASA has always been saying, that there needs to be increase in budget allocation to the counties. Because to be quite honest, as Dunstan has rightly pointed out, these structures are already in place. So is it that there is insufficient funding from the county, or is it that they just want to misappropriate the funds? We cannot tell as at now. But we know very well that NASA has always been pushing for increase in budgetary allocation. But in the same breath, we have counties that at the end of each year return back a lot of unused cash back to the exchequer. So I think now Kenyans, this is the point where some of the counties will be seeing a situation where some of the counties will be, leapfrogging others in terms of development, or others lagging behind. So your kind of decision at the county level, as who you appointed as governor in terms of manifesto and ability to deliver, like we've recently seen in the first match of the CAF, it was hosted in the newly refurbished Kakamega Stadium. And that is some of the things that Kenyans should be proud of devolution, if the funds is rightly used.
The biggest concern probably would be who to administer this money. From the county level, of course, there are ward administrators. Yes. But looking and reading this story, and Bwana Kang'ata says, I'm soliciting support from senators, but this is not a Jubilee bill, it is a private member's bill inspired by my days as a councillor. Probably just reading that, is the assumption that he's thinking is that the MCA will be the one to administer the money. Don't you think that that's the wrong way to go?
I think one thing is that you create a symbiosis, or a kind of a relationship between the MCA and the ward administrator, so that the two of them should be, there was a bill that was brought in Parliament by Stephen Sang, Senator Stephen Sang, about a county administration kind of bill to help in the administration of the county funds, where he had proposed that senator should become the overseer of the county distribution and all that. But if you look at this kind of bill, probably the kind of thing that he should propose should not be that. Maybe it should be within the purview, or it should be left to the ward rep or the ward rep to manage. But create kind of a committee that shall be able to help or work with
something similar to CDF.
Something similar to CDF. Then it will be able to run in a very good way. But more importantly, the issues of duplication of duties, where you get that, for example, Kura, which is a national body, or Kera, for example, is a national body. Then we have the same funds being sent to for example, the ward rep. I presume that one of the functions will be to repair maybe the feeder roads, maybe repair the kind of roads which are within his ward. And some of these roads also being repaired again by Kura, and some of these roads are also being repaired by the county government. Then you are in a situation where there is a duplicity of roles.
And nothing gets done.
Nothing gets done. But what I really wish that probably within his bill he should come up with clear-cut structures. What will be the roles of the money is sent to the wards, so that we don't have a situation whereby we have various roles being done by different bodies. For example, if you say that the ward rep, their money should go maybe to the CDF and education, probably facilitate the issue of security and all that. If the bill seeks to cure those maladies, then we'll be able to have a clear-cut mandate for various agencies. But if you leave out and just send the money to them, then that will be a waste of funds for that matter. But I also look at it from the perspective that as much as we say that the money sent to the counties is not enough, I think the Jubilee government has gone beyond the 15% that is probably given out by stipulated in the constitution, and actually gone to I think now about 38%. If, for example, the percentage that is really looking at should be anchored on whatever the money is being sent at the counties, and then that money should not come from the exchequer, should just come from within that budget.
We're looking at this headline on the back page of the Daily Nation. Senator in push for 21.8 billion shilling for wards. Should the bill become law, the 15 million shilling allocation will be directed to development of nursery schools, rural roads, water projects, bridges, and installation of street lights. That's a proposal by Irungu Kang'ata, the Murang'a senator. And that brings us to the end of our news review this morning. Abna Collins Mango and Danstar Riziki have been our news review panelists this morning. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I look forward to having this discussion more as we go along. Of course, the big headline on the front page of the Daily Nation: 1 million Form 1 places up for grabs. Education CS Fred Matiang'i expected to make key policy changes for secondary institutions as he launches today's selection for national schools in readiness for the free